Okay, uh, Nathan Burdick back with my first real video. The last video was an introductory video to the project that I'm working on, where I just want to practice the SERE, the briefings and teaching skills that I'm lacking. I'm already using crutch words, I can hear it. I want to use these to practice giving briefings and becoming more confident. So here's my first video. I decided to go with a pretty basic topic, fire, something that everybody needs in a survival situation. So here it is. I'm using the template that I learned in SERE selection with the index cards. I don't have time hacks on there, but it's just the basic format that they taught us when I was in selection. So I'm just going to keep using that. I doubt they'll change it in selection, so it'll keep me in practice. But here goes. I want you to picture this. You're stranded in the Arctic. Maybe you were with a group of friends. Maybe you were out on a remote tour of barren wastelands in Alaska. Maybe you went ice fishing. Maybe you're a photographer and you got lost, but a blizzard sweeps in. You don't know where you are. You don't know where to go. You're separated from your group and you're stuck. The snow is coming in so fast that you can't backtrack because it's filling in your footsteps behind you. You don't know what to do. Then on the horizon, you see a faint glimmer, an orange light. You instantly know what it is. It's fire. That means warmth and safety and hope. That has got to be a good feeling. I've personally never experienced it, but you can imagine, right? It's got to feel good. You see the fire and you're like, oh my gosh, that I'm saved. In those situations, in those survival situations, fire should be one of our top priorities. It's going to be, in a lot of cases, what saves you out there. There are a lot of cases throughout history of people being in those survival situations and not making it out because they didn't have fire, because they didn't have access to it or didn't know how to make it or yada yada. The best time to learn the skills that you need to build fire and be comfortable with all those skills is now, so that in the future, if you're ever in that situation, you have the skills and you know what to do and you're not lost and you're not struggling. So today, in this briefing, we're going to be talking about three main things. The first one is the different elements of fire, what makes fire fire, how it works. The second is the basics for preparation, your how to find a location, how to factor in wind, and gathering your resources to start the fire. And then lastly, just talk about a few different types of fire lays and their benefits. Just briefly, there's a lot of fire lays out there, but just briefly talk about a few. But to start, we're gonna start with the elements of fire. What makes fire fire? So there are three main elements of fire: the fuel, your heat or your ignition source, and oxygen, air. Fire can't live without oxygen. So the first of those three, fuel, it's broken down into three categories: your tinder, your kindling, and the fuel. The third category is again called fuel. The tinder has a low flash point, which means it's very easy to ignite. Tinder it's got to be very dry, easy to take a spark or a match or something like that. And you might need a few different levels of tinder in bundles or sizes or whatever in order to successfully create your fire. The next category, kindling, is used to bridge the gap between your tinder and the fuel. You can't just throw a big log right on top of your tinder bundle and expect the log to go up in flames. You need kindling in between, small sticks, not so super small, but small enough to catch the flame from the tinder and then spread it to the fuel, which is what comes next. The fuel is your final stage of building your fire. It's used to keep your fire at whatever desired level, whatever your desired level for the fire is. You, depending on the size of your fuel or the type of fuel you use, you'll get a hotter or colder, or a bigger or smaller fire. And also, those factors depend on how you orient your fire lay, but we'll get into that later. So that's the whole first element of fire. The second is your heat source, your ignition source. That is often a spark from a ferro rod or a match or a lighter. In some survival situations, that's friction. You can use a bow drill or a hand drill or a lot of other methods as well in order to use friction to generate heat, to create an ember and pour the ember onto your tinder and start your fire that way. The last element of your fire is oxygen. Obviously, fire can't live without oxygen. If you smother a fire in dirt, it will go out because it can't access the air that it needs to continue burning. Oxygen is very important for your fire. So with those understood, we can move on to preparation. So what are the basics for preparing your fire? Well, the first thing you want to do is find a location. You want to factor in things like the distance to your shelter, the direction of the wind, whether you want your fire to be very visible or not visible at all, stuff like that. After you've selected your location, you want to clear the area. Get rid of any dry debris, clear an area generally around 3 feet in diameter or bigger depending on the size of your fire. But for a basic fire, about 3 feet in diameter of just down to the soil. You don't have to put a ring of rocks around it, you don't have to lift it up on gravel or anything like that, just down to the soil. It works, that's good. The next thing you want to factor in is you want to build against a reflector of some sort. That could be a rock, big rock, or a cliff wall, or you can build a reflector out of logs that you stack, and there's different methods of doing that. And a reflector is also a great method to block out wind. If you've got a lot of wind coming from one direction and no way to put your fire in a position where you can't block out the wind, then you can build a wind block using the same methods, constructing the logs against the wind. It can be very helpful. The next thing you want to do, obviously, after you've found your location and cleared the area, built a reflector, is you want to gather your resources for building the fire. Your tinder, your kindling, your fuel, etc. General rule is you want to collect 3 times more than you're going to need, because it's better to have too much than too little. You don't want to be in the situation where you started your fire, your spark is in the tinder, and you are out of kindling and you need more. Well, you better have more than too little. The last step for preparation is your ignition source. You have to find out how you're going to start the fire. If you have a lighter or you have matches, great. Some people won't have those in those situations. Some people carry a ferro rod, or you might be able to find flint, the actual mineral flint, and strike that against steel. There's also, I believe, quartz creates a spark, but I should do more research. But you want to find your ignition source and know how to build your fire based on that ignition source. If you have a lighter, you can just build your fire up with the tinder on the bottom and light it. It's pretty easy. If you don't have that, or if you're making the fire with friction, you're going to want to start your friction to create the ember and have your tinder right there ready to catch the ember, put it in the tinder. Tinder goes with the kindling, you start the flame, you kind of build it as you tend that ember, make sure it doesn't go out. You don't want to just dump the ember onto an already built fire, because you're not going to be able to access the tinder. So that covers the basics for prep. So now we'll move on to a few different types of fire lays. Most fires are built with a specific need or use in mind, whether that's heat or just light or cooking, purifying water, boiling it, etc. These are a few different types of fire lays used in those situations, just some basic ones. There's a lot more than this, but I'm just going to cover a few. The first I have is the teepee. It's typically built as a very beginner level fire. It's bright, it stands tall, it casts a lot of light around, and it's good for boiling water. If you can hang a pot right over the teepee, it kind of gathers up to an apex and creates a very concentrated point of heat. So it's great for boiling water very quickly if you need to do that. You construct it by taking your tinder and sticking one stick of kindling in the ground over the tinder. And then you wrap more kindling and then more fuel, more logs over the top of the kindling, leaving a gap somewhere in the teepee facing towards the wind so that the wind can come and funnel the air in and feed your fire with plenty of oxygen. So that's the teepee. Next is the log cabin. Log cabin is great. It has a lot of openings and it's very open to the air, which makes it very hot, which is great. It also burns down very uniformly and creates a very nice bed of coals, which can be very helpful for cooking, or there's a lot of different uses for coals that you can use those coals to then create a different type of firelight. Maybe you'll use a log cabin to create a very large bed of coals, and then use that bed of coals to create the next fire I have here, which is called the long fire. The long fire is when you take a trench, dig a trench, and you can take 2 logs on either side of it and put coals all down on the inside of that trench. And now you've got a very convenient spot for cooking. You can take your cooking utensils and put them on top between the logs there. It's also good for a large group of people. It's a lot of room for multiple people to be cooking. The last fire I have on here is called the Dakota fire hole. It's a very cool fire. You build a Dakota fire hole by digging a hole straight down, and then another one at an angle meeting that same hole. And you want that hole that's at an angle to be facing the wind so the wind can funnel in, feed the fire, and push up. This is a great fire if you need to be more discreet or not have a visible flame. The flame will be mostly in the hole. You want to dig it 1.5 to 2 feet deep to make sure that your flame isn't very visible, and it's convenient for cooking as well. You can place your cooking utensils, your pots or what have you, right over top on the dirt, or you can lay logs across the top. It's very convenient. So that's just a couple examples. In reality, knowing a large variety of fire lays gives you a lot more options in that survival situation. And knowing the correct fire for that situation could save you a lot of unnecessary stress or trouble. So let's quickly go back over what we've discussed so far. We talked about what makes a fire, the elements of a fire. We talked about the basics for preparation, preparing to build your fire, finding a location, etc. And then a few different types of fire lays. Again, there's a lot more than the ones I listed, but those are a few basic types that can come in handy. So understanding the tools that I just discussed could save your life in some situations. History teaches us to avoid the mistakes made by those who came before us. And knowing what to do now helps us to know what to do in the future when we're in that situation. With the proper knowledge, you can survive anywhere, and fire might be what gets you out alive. And done. Thanks for watching.